guys, I'm super excited about this particular episode. We've been trying to put this together for quite some time over the course of the last several months, just going back and forth and schedules and just things kept popping up. I'm going out of town. He's going out of town. Shabam's going out of town. Shabam went over to Rupin's house. I went over to Shabam's house. Like, it was crazy. Like, we just could not make this thing come together, but we finally did it. We finally made it happen. And I'm so glad that Rupin Rach is with us. Now, if you don't know who Rupin is not only one of the students with Modern Success, but he is a dating coach himself in the UK, super duper Indian. Like, man, this is going to be a banger. I'm so looking forward to doing this one, man, because look, we've had the opportunity, Rupin, to, kind of chop it up and hang out and things like that at the retreats and all that. And you know how the retreats are for Modern Success. It's like, man, it's like trying to wrangle kittens. Like, everybody's just kind of going and doing their own thing. Everyone's just going around everywhere. And so, we had some opportunity to, build and get to know each other and things like that, but not as much as I would have liked to have. So I'm glad that we have this technology available that we can have you on the podcast and, really get the nitty gritty and get some of, your journey and what it is that you're wanting to accomplish and what you're wanting to do. And I know that the listeners of the podcast here are going to be able to resonate with it because, look, everybody's on a journey. Everybody is trying to level up, or you should be wanting to level up if you're not. But, this guy has definitely overcame adversity and is making it happen, man. Not everybody has the wherewithal and the availability to start coaching and to start like really being a professional inside of this space and somebody that's legitimate and authentic and just, be able to break it down and all that. And Rupin is definitely one of those guys. And as good of a student and a coach as he is, he's a very subpar MC. So I'm just messing with you. I do gotta say, before like we really get down to business here. Look, man, one, I was super impressed with the song that you put together for the retreat. Like, you recorded that and everything, man. Like, that's dope, dude. Like, not something I was expecting. That's for sure. And then on top of that, man, like, you had bars. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't just on some, whatever, mumble rap, trap, like just saying the same phrase over and over and over again. Like, you had legitimate bars, so that was dope.
Strength for sure. I like to write.
How often do you rhyme, man? Like, how often do you write stuff?
I just finished writing a new track right now. So I went to Lanzarote last week and I did some meditation training and I was just overwhelmed with new information. So I thought, what better way to just express it than to put it into a track? And so I just finished that song, which is totally different on my normal style, where I'd normally be like actually rapping, trying to make the bars a bit harder. This one's a bit soulful with some melody incorporated.
Okay. That would be dope, man. Like a track that's like breaking down the meditation process and everything, because that's not something that and I'd like to think that I listen to pretty intellectual hip hop, like I don't, just listen to like radio friendly type stuff, like I like a lot of like real deep underground type of stuff. And I can't think of a time where I've heard, somebody like really breaking down meditation and, like what that entails and things like that, like that's pretty dope, man.
I've always tried to intertwine my lyrics with whatever it is that I'm working on in terms of the business. So that it's kind of like employs my talents to then market myself and introduce people to new topics. So I've always had sort of like themes within my tracks, which is whatever it is I'm working on at the time. And now that it's this meditation, I'm feeling like it's a great way to teach people, because by the time that you tell them on a reel or a TikTok or you write an article, people don't really listen and take it in. But when they're singing along to the track and when they're enjoying it and they're listening to it, they really absorb the information in a different way. So, and I can reach people a lot faster. So I think that's always been the goal of mine with my music, was to introduce new sort of like philosophies and foundational stuff to them.
Yeah.
And the term that we're trying to coin is like conscious rap, and I think there's a couple of other rappers who are into that as well.
Oh, well, conscious rap's been a thing forever, dude. You know, like a long time.
And it's just not mainstream. It's like
Well, of course. Yeah.
it's slightly niche, and I think my tracks have always had like cheat codes hidden inside them, so that if you listen to them well enough and you break down the lyrics, there's a lot of information that's there. It's never just filler words.
Yeah, that's dope, man. And when I was an artist, that's what I considered myself to be, is a conscious rapper, you know.
Yeah.
Super duper backpacker type stuff, you know what I mean? Like boom bap original rap type of stuff, just talking about life stuff, not like, you know, like balling out of control type of stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
so, yeah. So I feel that, man. That's super dope. So, you know, and like I was saying before, man, you know, we haven't had as much of an opportunity to kick it as much as I would like to, because you know how those events go, man. You know, there's only so much time to really interface with each individual person and things like that, and especially, you know, as a coach, you know, people want to come up and ask questions and want special attention and things like that. And that's cool. That's what we're there for. But it also divides our time significantly, right? So, well, man, one of the things I'd really like to know is your journey, your personal journey, man. Like, where did it start? What got you into this space, man? Like, where did this all start for you?
Oh yeah, thanks. Well, what a beautiful introduction to start off with. Thanks so much, Dale. That's really nice, and I totally agree with you that it is difficult to really get to know people on a one-to-one basis when we're on Modern Successes retreats. We're running around from bar to bar, or we're doing lessons, and like you're always there to help everybody. You say often that if anybody has any concerns or questions, that they can reach out to you, and that you live that when you're in person. So, getting a fraction of your time, a couple of moments here and there when we've been on the retreats has been really nice. But I'm glad to be here today to be able to discuss things in a little bit more depth. And when we were in Miami this time, I think I remember mentioning to you that I've actually followed you on Facebook for a really long time, and I look back.
You did say that. I forgot about that.
Something like 10 years. I'm 33 right now. So it might even be longer than 10 years that I've been following you on Facebook in the Dale Valor Facebook dating.
Yeah.
And you probably cold outreached me on Facebook back in the day when I was just, you know, when I was young and when I was like trying to figure out some of the stuff. Way before I even decided to be a coach of any kind. And my story, I would say, like, it is varied. Like, I've been through a couple of chapters of my life, and the chapters keep turning much faster these days. So I keep like moving and honing in on exactly what my destiny is supposed to be. And right now I'm a dating coach in London. It seems like a lot of Indian, Asian gentlemen are attracted to my coaching practice. I think partly because I'm Indian and I speak in the language that they understand, but maybe it's because there's deeper sort of like triggers and structures within the community that are difficult for others to understand, that challenge people in ways and challenge the dating pool and the marketplace. So I have found that a lot of Indian people are coming to me at the moment, but that hasn't always been the case. I've like had a variety of clients, and that this is just my current niche is dating. At the time when I started to be a life coach, it was actually conscious parenting. That's where I started with Dr. Shefali. So I trained with Dr. Shefali for 6 months online.
What's conscious parenting?
So conscious parenting is the healing of the self and the reparenting of the self, so that you can pass down generational patterns and traumas, which you inadvertently are, you know, a byproduct of your conditioning, the things that you've gone through, the unloved parts of you, and perhaps the unmet needs that then we inflict onto other people in the world. And Dr. Shefali specifically wrote these books called The Conscious Parent and The Awakened Family. And this really attracted me in at a time when I was like going through a career change and some difficult times in my life where I needed to rebrand and evolve as a person. when I found Dr. Shafali's work, which was actually through my sister, I was instantly felt heard and resonated and aligned with what she was doing. And I love the mission. So the mission is to help parents specifically to not pass down the troubles that they've had in their childhood. Sometimes it's out of like ignorance that you just don't know any better. And sometimes it's like a unconscious, malicious attempt to make sure that your children don't have a better childhood than what you have had. So there's a lot of reasons why people accidentally do this and that they inadvertently pass down these problems from generation to generation. But I was inspired by that and wanted to make some impact. I wanted to really help out with especially within my community, the Indian community, but I feel like just generally in terms of like the planet, like we are all going through this emotional, spiritual, psychological evolution where we just have so much information right now that teenagers say to their parents, actually, that's not the right way to parent me, because they've seen it on TikTok and because they have so much access to information that they kind of school their parents. And we're going through this like big change in the way that we treat each other and the way that we look at life. So that's the mission that I kind of like started on. And I would say that I'm absolutely still on that mission. Nothing's really changed apart from that my niche has transferred from helping parents. I'm not a parent myself, so I found it very difficult to come up with the right kind of information and to help parents in the best way possible. Also, I felt like there wasn't very much trust. So a lot of parents were looking at me going like, why wouldn't I just go with a conscious parenting coach who is a parent themselves? And I kind of agree with them that it's like there's a lot of things that I wouldn't be able to understand about their life and what they're going through. And then alternatively, I also have exactly the right amount of the lack of empathy is there. So when they say like, but it's really difficult because there's 3 kids and it's really difficult, and I'm sort of very strict and by the book, and I remind them that actually like it doesn't really matter the circumstances or the situation that you're in. The reality is this, and that we need to go back to the actual philosophy of the conscious parenting and to re-parent ourselves so that we don't act out of reactivity and that we start to respond well. So there were some pros and some cons to me being a conscious parenting coach, but I really wanted to help people on the same part of the journey that I'm on. I wanted my business and my content and everything that I was sharing to be very much in alignment with exactly who I am at the moment and where I'm at on my journey. So I transferred from conscious parenting to dating coaching, which I feel is just the same coaching, but just 2 steps earlier. If you imagine that you've got children, but then you might be like married and now it's dating. So I'm just like finding the clock 2 steps and helping people at that early stage so that by the time that they get to having children, that they've already had a healthy relationship with the right partner, and that there's not loads of things that they could have managed earlier, and that they're trying to, recoup their losses and make a bad situation good. Instead, we're starting off with a good situation, picking the right partner, having healthy romantic encounters, and coming from a healed perspective right from the start of dating.
Okay. So what I'm getting, and correct me if I'm wrong, I may be completely way off base, but kind of what I'm hearing is a lot of, you're helping people work on like inner child type of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then by healing that inner child dynamic, it enables you to be a better adult. And hence being a better adult makes you a more attractive partner. And you're going to, draw people into your life that's positive for you because you are that person and birds of a feather and whatnot. Right. Mm-hmm. And then, so you have healthy relationships, which lead to healthy family dynamics.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. There's a healthy relationship that starts with the self. Mm-hmm. And when you have that healthy relationship, when you love yourself enough, then you have enough love for everybody else around you, and that you can share that love. So there is that healing that happens inside that becomes magnetic to exactly your dream partner, and you start to attract in the lifestyle, the job, the things that you want. Like you start to manifest and draw everything that you want. But also, I think there's a big part of it, which is the mental health challenges of not having what you want over and over again, because you trust that your destiny is going to find you, and that if you do the right thing and you be a good person consistently, and that you come from a healed perspective, that it doesn't matter whether you're not getting what you want, because there's a larger cosmic story that's playing out. And so when you have like enough trust, and that you know how to manage your own inner well-being and fortify your inner world, so that you're not at the mercy of some fickle, female who basically decides that she doesn't like you the next day, and all of a sudden you're descending into the darkness of depressive thoughts. And when you're out in the streets in London trying to meet girls, like, it can only take one or two bad encounters for you to all of a sudden be like all over the place and finding it very difficult.
Well, welcome to my world. I deal with guys with that every single day.
I think some of that just comes from our own insecurities. So when we haven't really had the healthiest childhood, or maybe we've gone through a lot of struggles, and then we've experienced school and bullying, and then we've had our relationships when we're teenagers, then in our 20s, we've had jobs which have not worked out well. We failed our driving test over and over again. All of these things that keep reminding us that we're not enough and that we're not okay the way that we are, then that filters into our relationships. So there's, I think there's some negative help that we do. Like, we try to make sure that people are not underselling themselves, that they're not settling, and that they have a more boosted sense of self, so that they can start to trust that whatever's meant for them is going to find them, as well as being in a healthy space to attract it in. So it's a bit of both. It's a bit of attraction, but also a bit of like inner work to just make sure that you are settled and complete.
Yeah. No, that makes sense to me. How many times did you fail your driver's test, Shivana?
I didn't fail it.
I thought for sure you told me that you failed a couple of times or something like that, or maybe I'm tripping, but
no, it was the bike test that I was not. I failed. I think yes, it was the bike test.
Okay,
it's one of the driving.
All right.
Yeah.
So what I find is, and this isn't universally true, but I do find it to be very common, is that people who, when they get into coaching and start working with people to help them elevate whatever niche that they happen to be in, usually the biggest struggle that coach had long before they were coaching, the things that they had to work through, right, to elevate themselves to a level to be able to help others, usually that's kind of where their niche ends up going. You know what I mean? Because they have so much experience in working on this particular thing, whatever this particular thing is. Like for me, inner game and stuff like that, like that was a huge sticking point for me when I was, kind of fresh and new to, the dating space and all that kind of stuff. And that was something that I had to take and put a lot of work into, and a lot of self-discovery. And then hence, years later, here we are now. My new book's about to come out and all that kind of stuff. It's all very inner game related. I mean, I have a book called Inner Game. You know what I mean? So, so with that conscious parenting that you were talking about, was that something that you felt like you had to work through a lot of, like, to kind of elevate yourself? Was that like a sticking point for you?
Yeah, you're right. I think that when people become coaches, it's like everything's inauthentic until you really start to speak to your own younger version of yourself. And that when you really help other people go through the same transformation that you went through, that's the biggest gift that you can give to the world. And so rewinding a little bit further back, before I joined Dr. Shefali's training and became a conscious parenting coach, I, for a long time, thought that I was doing great in my relationships. Like, I thought I was like the Don, and that all of my friends used to look to me for relationship help, and that I was super confident. So inner game was not necessarily the struggle that I had, but I was perhaps coming from a more of a narcissistic perspective, where I was like, collecting trinkets of my relationships. And I look back and I think like I would put up with quite a lot because I had a sense of gain that I was taking from my relationships, and that I was hoping that my relationships would mask the feelings of inadequacy, and that they would fulfill my goals on an external perspective, and that I would look like I was doing a good job and being successful, instead of actually, feeling it deeply within me. So I wasn't really struggling with confidence, which is probably where like maybe you and I have very different perspectives on what we had to go through to transform. And conscious parenting really spoke to me because I had a role model of a healthy, loving relationship, which was my parents, which I had always looked up to. And on the outside, it was great. Lots of people used to say, like, you're this perfect, happy little family. Like me and my sister, we used to present and represent the family as this like really content, well-rounded four of us, and that we were very isolated from the rest of our family. Like Indian families are quite big. We have a lot of our relatives that live in northwest London, but my parents had moved further away from that community. And they had always said that that was because they wanted to get away from all the nonsense. And perhaps there was a part of it which was that they would like to be able to conduct their own nonsense, but without right? You look at like the distance that it creates when families move from one continent to another. So we have like Indians in 1930s moving to Africa, to Kenya, to help build the railway for the British Empire, and then a generation and a half later moving to England. And so there isn't this norm, like in Indian culture, it's normal to live with your grandparents, and that would create a sense of protection for everybody, that there was some elders in the room that would be able to help to navigate and manage the complexities of being in a family. And then when you strip that one generation away, but then there's still the mentality of like respect your elders and whatever your elders say goes, then sometimes that can branch off into unhealthy spaces, and there's no policing from above. So it's like it's sort of like a free-for-all or a mercenary kind of state. And that, I think that's a difficulty that a lot of British Indians face, because this is just really normalized, and that there isn't another generation above to just make sure that things aren't getting out of hand. So when I looked at my parents with a little bit more of a fine-tooth comb, and I just said, like, maybe there's something going on at home that I needed to just understand a little bit better. I started to realize that, like, I was holding a lot of secrets, and that I was protecting the image of my family. And it's nothing too dramatic, there's nothing really like really awful, but it's just the way that I was inauthentic, and that I had severed there was two parts of me. There was this part that I knew there was something that was wrong, and there was another part of me that would say that everything was right. And so I was just in two separate parts of myself, and depending on who I was with, and especially when I was on my own, that would be when I would express the pain and the difficulties, but it would come out in a healthy way, like talking or journaling, or being able to like process it like I do now. Instead, what it will come out through is like addiction, and like, the like going out and meeting girls and like trying to like prove something to the world,
right,
or maybe overworking myself, or poor eating habits. So there's a lot of ways that I can look back and wonder like what was how it was manifesting, but it doesn't really matter, because everybody manifests it in their own unique way, and that whatever our troubles are, they're always just the deeper part of us, the deeper knowing that's trying to communicate, that it's trying to communicate to our surface that there's something going on, there's something wrong. So that's how I ended up in the conscious parenting sphere, was because this was really exactly what I needed to learn and what I needed to go through. And I only realized that my relationships were tricky, and that I had not actually understood women at all when I went through my marriage. I got married. I was married for 6 months, and then it very swiftly ended. And I couldn't do anything about it. I was like just kind of like helpless, and I couldn't solve it. I couldn't fix it. There was no like logic or reason or like maybe tactics that I could employ to bring this relationship back. Once it had just collapsed and gone too far down into the path of irreconcilable differences is what it says on the paperwork. But as I came out of my divorce, I was lost because I was like, everything that I had worked very hard on didn't mean anything. It didn't go anywhere. And like all of the structures of society that I trusted, like marriage, like that you stay together forever and that you can't break some of those constructs. I'm not that religious, but I remember that that standing in front of the priest and in front of all of my family and friends, and that you invite God into the stage to walk around the fire 7 times. All this stuff like is just religious dogma to me. I don't really understand any of it, but I felt it. There was like a contract that I'd made with my soul to fulfill this, but it didn't go the way that I wanted it to. So I had to really let go of some of the control over life and realize that I'm not the one who gets to decide everything that happens to me and for me. I have to be at peace with the unknown and start to release some of that. I was tightly clenched and wanted things to be exactly the way that I wanted them to go. So yeah, just like coming out of that, very lost, didn't know who I was, didn't know what was true, what was real, where the ground was, and then started to look inwards at myself and started to wonder whether I had invited that relationship in and whether I had done anything to disrupt the relationship, to actually dismantle it from within. Like if I had caused the implosion of the relationship myself. And, I found big answers of yes, like it wasn't all my fault, but like both of those questions, the answer was yes, like absolutely. There was some stuff that I could have done better and could have learned earlier. But when you look at the role model of what I thought a happy family was supposed to be, is really difficult for me to become anybody other than who I was. And so I had to go through that to come out on the other side so that then I can be such an effective coach and somebody that actually helps people, because like I've transformed that part of me and I've changed and evolved, but I had to go through it to get to this side. And now I can have like healthy connection and a lot more peaceful, mindful space when I'm in my relationships.
Yeah, there's a lot that I want to get into there.
Okay.
All right. So how long ago was your divorce?
2019 was end of 2019 was
okay. So all right, so 5 years ago, basically. Well, something like that.
Isn't that like right during COVID, if I'm not wrong?
It was about 3 months before the lockdown started, but COVID was just a rumor at the time. And also the divorce takes a little while, so it was probably like July, August that we kind of decided, or she decided that she wanted to break up. Then by November it was like the paperwork was in.
Did you deal with any type of what's the word I'm looking for here? Imposter syndrome at all in going through this whole process?
At which point?
Well, because now you had said that you're like, I didn't think that I had any issues, like in terms of relationship wise, like confidence wasn't a struggle and things like that. So a lot of times people who go into, where they think that everything is a certain way. You're looking at your family dynamic growing up. You got this ideal as to what that should look like, right? And you're not really having an issue with confidence. You're talking to women, having relationships and whatnot. And then inevitably you get married and then all that implodes on itself. And then you got COVID right around the corner. I know lockdowns didn't happen until probably like the following year, but nonetheless, at least for the first few months, nobody had nothing to do. You know what I mean? Like you're just at your house basically. So there's a lot of time for self-reflection and things like that, I'm sure. At any of that point, did you kind of feel like, man, I'm not who I thought that I was. I'm not the person that I thought that, I thought I had this on lock, what happened? And then you start coaching, like whether it's dating coaching or the conscious parenting, right? Like at any of those points, did you like kind of like question, am I the person that I thought that I was? Or am I inferior to what I thought that I was? Or am I, right? And that's where a lot of times people start feeling that imposter syndrome type of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So yeah, I think there's, a number of times where I was questioning my identity, and I'm glad that I did that. It was the catalyst to actually become a very much more authentic person. And when I look back on my relationships before, there's probably more than two, but two ways I can think of that people deal with imposter syndrome. One is that they hesitate and that they don't take action, they don't do anything because they don't feel like they have the certification to be who they should be. Right. And then other way is to go out and just prove it constantly because you feel so much of an imposter. And I was just proving it constantly. So I was like going out and like cold approaching and day game and meeting girls and like dating, serially having a relationship. Like I can't think of many times where I didn't have a relationship. I was like quite consistent with that throughout my 20s. And so I was just out there like proving it all of the time.
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. So when
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to think about the imposter syndrome because it was a dismantling of everything that I thought I was that really helped me to come out of it. It was like burning all of the self down into ashes and then being reborn out of the ashes was like this perfect metaphor for what I went through. Because like when people met me about 2020, my friends from before, they were like, you're a totally different person. Like how is this person the same Rupin that we used to know, who used to show off all the time and used to have like all this materialistic goals and intention, and that you like only would date these like very beautiful looking women who basically had like a very distinctive look about them, and that it was like there was a lot of, and I was also this healthcare professional getting paid really well in my job and a manager of a store. So what happened there was that I lost my job. I got fired from work. Got fired. I got investigated for the firing that took place. Then I had some trouble with with like addiction, and like the police were involved, and then I had to move out of the house. There was I had a big like house that me and my wife had bought, and the relationship was collapsing. Then my sister got very upset with me. She left, and my parents were also going through their own struggles. So there was like a complete dismantling all at the same time, and that's like that's surrounding COVID at the same time. So I also was losing the identity of work. You don't get to be an optician if there's no eye test happening. Like if there's no store, you can't just feel like you're an optician if that's not what you're doing with your time. And so and I really had to look inwards to say, what do I actually want to do with my day? Like if I end up on lockdown, because they promised us 2 weeks, right? And that was what was really challenging, is every 2 weeks, they would say it's another 2 weeks. And so by the end of 6 months, if you just thought, oh, in 2 weeks, I'll go back to work, then you've really you've just had this carrot dangled in front of you and you've lost so much time. But almost Jake once calling me. Sorry. So by the end of the 2 weeks, I have my phone on Do Not Disturb, by the way, by the end of the 2 weeks, the first, second time, third time, I was like, if this carries on for a long time, like I really need to figure out who I am and what I want to do. So I bought a pottery wheel because I had always wanted to be a potter and wanted to make statues and sculptures and vases and that. So I decided to just follow something that might bring me joy. And I didn't know whether it was going to be exactly the right thing for me, but it turned out that I'm not supposed to be a potter, and that was not the right goal for me to pursue. But it ticks stuff off the list quickly when you just go ahead and you try stuff that you think you might be that you're supposed to be. Once you realize that you're not supposed to be that, it just opens like other avenues for you to go out and explore. So that was kind of when I self-actualized and became a much more authentic version of myself is when I was actually like asking myself, what do I want to do with my time? Like, who do I be? And what my destiny is. You know, there's like this ikigai where you can do the 4 circles and you can work out like, what does the world need? What is the world willing to pay for? What am I amazing at? And what do I love doing? So when you do the Venn diagram and you see which ones are in the middle and cross all 4, and that's your ikigai. So doing that over and over again was really helpful.
I got you. Okay. Super dope. One thing that you touched on, and this is something that I was really wanting to get into, and I know Shaban was wanting to get into this as well, is some of the cultural differences inside of dating and relationships and things like that, and what some of these things look like. Now, I know just from my own coaching experience and things like that, and coaching guys who, and not just Indian, but different Eastern Asian countries and even like traditionally like Jewish families, and there's a lot of where, and I respect this, how important the family component is, and what your elders have to say and stuff like that. Although I respect that, there's also something to be said about women often are attracted to rugged individualism. Like, I'm a guy that lives by my own code. I'm a guy that I get out here and do this. I don't need nobody's permission. I don't, I love my parents, but I don't need their blessing for me to go out and live my life, and that's an attractive quality. Right. And so how do you mitigate, the kind of the pairing of the two? Because I have seen, before you answer, I have seen guys like, even inside of, modern success, just different student, obviously I'm not going to mention names, but, different students who, and again, this is across, many ethical and, racial,
diversity.
Yes, that. Where what's played out is they're like, yeah, my mom said I can't be in this program anymore. And I'm like, dude, you're 40. Like, you know what I mean? Like, what? And so, and to me, like, as somebody who, like, I love my family like anybody else, but I don't have a watchful eye on what I'm doing. Like, I just do what I do. You know what I mean? And nobody says boo about it. So, like, how do you manage those two components?
Yeah.
You have individualism and autonomy, but also at the same time, you're very, I don't want to say reliant, but very in tune with what your family kind of wants from you and what they ideally would like to see happen for you.
Yeah, I love that question because it's fascinating, and there isn't a right answer because there's a lot of differences in the way parents treat their adult children. So I think like individual basis is like, sometimes the parents are coming from their own ego, and that's the beauty of the conscious parenting, is that you have this compassion for your parents because they're just suffering from their own societal pressures, and that they see the children as this extension of their story. And so they just want to be able to sit down with their friends, playing cards and having crisps, and be able to tell their friends that my son is doing well at this thing, or he's, got a doctorate, or he's maybe driving a BMW. And so they're just coming from their own egoic space where they have pressure from the society, which is it's so close knitted, and that everybody kind of knows each other's business. But like I was saying, like, we are going through this evolution right now where we are given permission to change and to change the lineage, to break free of all the patterns from the past, especially as like, we haven't lived in India for like 100 years. It's like, why do we have to be super Indian about everything? It's like
that is true. And like, Indians have like the highest level of societal programming, like to like the highest extent. Now, to be fair, there are some good things at it, but there's also a lot of bad things as well. So it's like, why can't we take what's good and not take what we don't like? Like, why is it that you have to take the entire thing? Why can't we, like, like selectively take what we want? It's just like,
Exactly. It's just that when we select what we want, we're always going to do that from our own personal interests, and so we'd like to leave behind having to tell mum and dad what we're up to, and we'd like to keep the food and and like having them do our laundry. But it's like you can't have one without the other, so you need to find that balance. And what I try to say to my clients when they are struggling with this is that if you had a room full of 170-year-old people, mix of men and women, and you went into the room and you said, "Excuse me, random control group, can I ask you some questions on my life? I'm deciding whether to go out with this girl or this girl." And like 90% of the people in the room, so like 90 of these old ladies and old men, say that you should definitely go out with girl A and not girl B. You're not going to take that advice. You're not going to be like, well, random group of 170-year-olds are like the way that I'm going to decide my future, and that I'm going to take their advice as gospel. And so once you're an adult, you can start to recognize that your parents are just two of the people in that room, and that their job as raising you is completely done, which is not what they let you feel. They don't allow you to think that you're not their child anymore. You're always their child, but the job of raising you is completed. And so now you actually have to live out all of your decisions, and whatever decision you make in your life, you're the one who has to sit there with it. And in 5 years, 10 years, you're the one who has to put up with the consequences. So if you can try to remember that you need to be autonomous and you need to make your own decisions, because you have to put up with everything that is the result of those decisions. And then really try to like just remember that metaphor of like 100 people. Like, you're not going to take that vote into account, and you should try to recognize that your parents are exactly the same as them. Once you're an adult, it's like, okay, their advice is useful, and that they love you, and that they come from the best perspective, and maybe they know you the best out of everybody. But sometimes they just are speaking from their own lens, and that they're giving advice from their own version of reality and their own truth. And then even worse than that, sometimes their ego is involved, and that they are doing it for their own personal invested interests, which are not suited to the child, to the adult child. So that's the balance of like, how do you not take your parents' information too seriously? How do you like detach yourself and cut the umbilical cord?
Okay, I don't disagree with what you're saying. Okay, I want to play devil's advocate here. Well, man, I know that you got a lot of information out of this particular episode. Listen, if you need to go a little bit deeper, always feel free to reach out to me. Look, there's a few ways you can do that. You can shoot me an email. You can send me a DM. I'm easy to find, but the best place that you can find me is at freegiftfromdale.com. It's in the description of the episode, and you're going to get a couple of free gifts there. You'll get the first chapter of my book, Inner Game, and you will also find an exercise to help you find out about yourself and who you really, truly are at the core. Okay. And listen, if you haven't subscribed to the channel or the podcast, make sure you do so, man. It takes you 1 second to do it. It means the world to us here. Okay. If you know somebody who could really use this information, feel free to share it, man. Don't hold it to yourself. You know what I mean? So we will see you in the next one.